Welcome back to Finnish Made Easier. Today we're going to be talking about the perfect tense in Finnish. If you haven't heard about what the perfect tense is, this is basically when we're talking about sometimes how the past deals with the present or how the past deals with a past event. For example, this is usually when we use the word have in English. Maybe say, I have done. Maybe you want to say, I have eaten, I have seen. It's very common. We're talking about some past event that's dealing with right now. We call it present perfect. So someone can say, have you seen this movie? And you can say, I have seen the movie. You saw it in the past and it's dealing with right now. I have eaten already. So that's what we call the perfect tense. You usually have and then a verb. I have eaten, I have seen. Past perfect tense is when we're talking about how the past dealt with a past event, which is kind of weird, but it's like maybe I had done. So this is, you can usually see the difference in English between have and had. If we say have, we're talking about right now. I have eaten. If we're talking about had, we're talking about at some point in the past. Maybe you're telling a story and you're like, I had just eaten, or I had just walked in. We're still talking about a past event, but we're talking about an event that before that even. I had walked in when this happened. I had just eaten when this happened. So that's kind of the difference. It might be easiest just to think when we use have in English, it's present. When we use had in English, it's past. And we're going to talk about how to form both of these types of sentences today. To do this, we're going to need to use the nut case. So if you haven't watched my video on how to do the nut case, I would watch that video first. I'll put a link to that in the description. But if you have, then that's great. You'll be completely ready for this video. So an interesting thing about how this works in Finnish is in English, like I said, we have and had. For some reason in Finnish, they don't use have and had to do this. They use the word olla, or to be. They say olen and olin. So you kind of have to make this transition in your brain when we say I have done or I have something, then they're going to say olen and then a word in the nut case. So they're going to have conjugated olla in the nut case. So if I wanted to say you have done, it'd be olet tehnyt. So we're going to have whatever we conjugate olla to be, and then a word in the nut case. And then if we're doing past tense, then it just works the same way. We put it in past tense. So olin tehnyt. So just like how have and had is present tense and past tense, olen and olin is present tense and past tense, or olet and olit, or on and oli. That's all there is to making it the difference between present perfect and past perfect. We do an olla and then the nut case. So it's actually pretty easy and it expands what you're able to say quite a bit once you get used to this. So I would recommend definitely practicing this one and trying to put it into your vocab. But let's just try a few practice examples to see kind of how this works, and hopefully they'll start to kind of click in your mind of how this works. So let's take first, for example, I have eaten. So again, this means that you have eaten at some point in the past, but it still applies to right now. I've already eaten, you could say. I have eaten. How we do this, we can notice that we have I have. We're going to try to change that to be I am. So the have corresponds to olla. So I have, so we're going to do olen. And then we're going to put syödä in the nut case. I put a little reminder up here of how the nut case works, but hopefully you've seen my video on nut case, or at least are familiar with how it works. But if it ends in DA, we get rid of the DA and add NUT. So I can say olen syönyt. So again, we don't say have at all really when we say in Finnish. We say like I am eaten, which obviously that doesn't mean that, but it means I have eaten. Olen syönyt. On the other side, if we wanted to say I had been, maybe I had been sick or something like that, then, again, since we have this I had, then we're going to conjugate olla to past tense, which is, the stem would be oli, and then we'll add an N because of I. So olin. And then bin is to be, which is also olla. So we can put olla in the nutcase, which is going to be consonant, consonant A, which means we can just get rid of that A and add ut. Olin, olut. And again, I want to emphasize that you can also swap these. If I want to say I have been, I can say olen olut. If I want to say I had eaten, I can say olin syönyt. It's just whatever tense this is in is what defines if it's have or had. The nut will always be the same. Olen syönyt, olin ollut. Again, also like in the nut case, if I was doing these plural, I would also change it to eet. So if I said we have eaten, I could say olemme syöneet. Or we had been, olimme olleet. So watch out for that as well. But let's keep doing some more examples to kind of see how this basically works. I have heard. I have, so we're going to have olen. You could easily switch this for you have would be olet. We have would be olemme. And then heard, kuulla. And the nut case is going to be kuullut. I'm just realizing that I missed a U here. That should have two U's. Kuulla. That's my bad, sorry. Olen kuullut. I have heard. Olen kuullut. Next, we should do, let's just do this one next. I have not seen. So this one, you can see that I put I have not seen. So how do we make it kind of negative? Well, all we do is when we're conjugating this is conjugate it to be negative. So I have not, we can kind of correspond that to like I am not, which is en ole. And then again, we can just put this in the nut case, which is katsonut. En ole katsonut. I have not seen. En ole katsonut. If we flip over to this side, I had fixed. We're going to have olin, because I had, and then put that in the nut case. Korjata goes to korjanut. I had fixed. Olin korjanut. And I had not gone. To go is mennä. So this one's going to be kind of interesting. If we want to say I had not, we're going to use the past tense negative, which also uses the nut case. So if you remember from the video about past tense negative where I talked about nut case in the beginning, I was not, which is what this would correspond to, was en ollut. If we wanted it to be past negative, we use the no word, and then the word in the nut case. And then we're going to put this word in the nut case, which is mennyt. So we have en ollut mennyt. So we kind of have a double nut case there, kind of cool. So now we kind of have this whole system where we have present and past, and then even in the negatives, we can also do present and past. So olen syönyt, en ole katsonut, olin ollut, and en ollut mennyt are kind of our four general types that we can kind of usually fit them into. You can also ask questions with this, like oletko syönyt would be have you eaten? And we'll get into that in just a minute when we do practice. But it's pretty easy. I just want to stress before we do some more practice that we just kind of look at whatever tense this have is in. I have not, I have, I had not. And we're just going to conjugate olla in the same way that have is basically being conjugated. So let's do a little bit more complicated practice real quick to make sure you understand. Okay, I've put up some more complicated examples up here to make sure we really understand how to use this, because again, I think this is really useful once we understand how to apply this in all the situations that it can really be applied in. So we've got these four sentences and the verb that we're going to need for each of the sentences. So if you want to try it on your own, feel free to pause it now and try it out. If not, I'm going to go through them. Remember that if it's singular, it's going to have ut for the nut case. If it's plural, it's going to have eet. But you should know everything you need to be able to solve it on your own if you want to try. But if you haven't paused by now, then I'm going to start solving them. So, we have visited. So, we got to look at we have. That would kind of correspond to we are, which would be olemme. Olemme. We can say that this is we and in the present tense, and it's positive. So just olemme is what that would be for olla. And then visited, always just put the verb in the nutcase. Käydä is a da, so it just goes to nut. So we would have käynut with a y, but since it's plural, olemme, we're going to use the eet. So olemme käyneet. Olemme käyneet versus olemme käynyt. We have visited. Olemme käyneet. We visited. Have you learned? This one has to do with making verbs a question. To do that, we just conjugate it and add ko onto the end. I've made a video about that if you're curious to learn a little bit more about that. But for this one, first, let's just conjugate it. Make it be like you have learned, which would be, if we have you have, then that's singular and present. So it's just going to be olet. Then this one in the singular nutcase is going to be oppias, goes to oppinut. Oppinut. So olet oppinut is going to be you have learned. If we want to make it into a question, we just add a ko onto olet. Oletko oppinut. So this is kind of a useful thing to say sometimes if we want to be like, oh, have you learned this? Have you eaten? Have you seen? Oletko oppinut. We just do that with the ko and then the nutcase. Pretty easy. Oletko oppinut. He had ran. He had is, past tense, but still positive. So he had is going to be Oli. You can say han, Oli. Specify han, Oli, and then juossut. This one's going to be the consonant A, so we're just going to use that first consonant twice and then ut. Juossut. Han, Oli, juossut. He had ran. So if you're telling a story, you say he had ran somewhere. Han, Oli, juossut. And they had not wanted. So this one's past tense and negative. How do we do past tense and negative for olla? With he, we say he eivät. And then again, it would be ollut if it was singular, but since it's plural, we're going to use ollet. He eivät olleet halunneet. So once again, we're going to use the EET on both nutcases because it's plural. He eivät olleet halunneet. As they had not wanted. So again, this olla is going to be in past, plural, negative. And then the haluta is just going to be in the nutcase, but plural. So if you can kind of get this one, you should be able to understand all of them. If you still have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comments below. But thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Hey,